Senate will come to order. Those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. Those in the gallery and those on the floor, please rise as we're led in prayer by Dr. Jesse Wagner of Mount Calvary Church in Charleston, West Virginia. Please remain standing after the prayer as the senator from Wyoming leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor.
Let's pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today claiming the promise from the words of Jesus, ask and you will receive. As we ask, we submit ourselves to your will, and we ask your blessing on these senators, these servants of the people, for all the staff and all the folks that make this house run. We ask that you might give an awareness of your presence. We ask for your wisdom to be imparted to them. We ask that you will provide solutions to the problems that they seek to address. We ask for your blessings upon our wonderful state. We ask that right and justice may prevail. We ask you to provide for those in need. We ask that you may grant deliverance to those in bondage. We ask you to give peace and calm in the midst of our conflicts. We ask that you may give us love for each other. You may give us a desire to help rather than hurt. That you may give us fearlessness. That you may give us forgiveness. We ask that you may give us faith. And above all things, we ask that you may give us yourself. And we ask, believing that we will receive, as we ask now in our Savior's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would all the senators and all the folks in the gallery please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading the journal.
West Virginia Legislature, Senate Journal, February 14th, 2023. The Senate met at 11 a.m. Senator Blair, Mr. President, in the chair.
Junior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that further reading the journal is dispensed with and the journal be approved. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Further reading of the journal is dispensed with and the journal is approved. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the provisions of Senate Rule 54 be suspended for the purpose of allowing certain guests the privileges of the floor for the day.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Senator Biddies. Introduction to the guest. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome the honorary pages for the day. Please stand and be recognized as your name is called. As guest is the Senator from Wyoming, Thomas Spencer, Ram Asa Anthombi. I should have practiced this. Did I get it close? Thank you. As guest is the Senior Senator from the 6th, Gabe Mills and Adian O'Quinn. As guest is the Senator from Lewis, Gail Carrilla. And as guest is the Senator from Upshur, Robert Gross. Will the Senate please make him feel welcome? Be seated. Further introduction, Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it's your honor and mine to introduce our doc of the day. In the rear of the chamber, we have with us Dr. Whit Mondez-Auguste. If you wouldn't mind standing up, let the Senate give you a warm welcome.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank the body for the rule suspension. I'd like to welcome to the Senate someone who's had a very, very positive impact on my life in the past couple of years, my fiancée, Stephanie, who's sitting in the back in front of Jackie. Stephanie, please stand.
Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members of the body, I would like to take a few minutes and tell you about two young men we have serving as honorary pages today. Ram Asanthambi and Thomas Spencer are honor students at Woodrow Wilson High School in Raleigh County. Ram is the president and Thomas is the vice president of the class of 2025. Both have been instrumental in developing the school's wetland project. Dedicating the past 2 years, I'm working the school's administration, community leaders, and civics groups on raising funds and beginning construction on a new outdoor classroom on the wetland site, a former pond in front of the school. Rom is a tennis player, having played #1 seed for Woodrow and representing the team at the state championships, as well as a 6-time junior champion on the USTA national circuit. He is interested in politics, government, and policy making, wanting to make a mark in his community and beyond, starting in his hometown with the Wetland Project. Thomas enjoys spending time with family and friends. He loves the outdoors, working in the yard, hunting and fishing, watching sports, and likes learning about the history of our state and country. Thomas enjoys traveling, has the goal of visiting every state and state capital. He writes stories and enjoys video editing. Like Rom, Thomas is very interested in government and politics and is excited for the future of the Wetland Project and what it contributes to their school and community. They are here today with their parents. Thomas's father, Mr. Bob Spencer, would you all please stand when we call your name, and Rom's mother, Dr. Devea Rajan. Will you please stand, and the Senate will make you welcome.
Further introduction, Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of myself and the Senator from Ohio, in the North Gallery is the Weirton City Manager, Mike Adams. If the Weirton City Manager, Mike Adams, could please stand and the Senate make him feel welcome.
Senator from Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senator from Harrison and myself, we have seated in the President's Gallery the chaperones of our honorary page, Dr. Iris Carrillo, if she'd please stand, and the Senate make her feel welcome.
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Seated in the North Gallery, and on behalf of the senators from the 5th, we have Jane Mills. Jane, please stand. She's the mother of our page, Gabe Mills. Senate, please join me and make her welcome.
Senator from Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not sure if I need a unanimous consent or do we have to assign this to a subcommittee. I got my script today. I guess I didn't introduce it correct. Do I
Proceed.
proceed? Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, today joining us is John Taylor from Taylor County. If you'd please stand up there in the North Gallery. He's a member of the AARP advocacy team and state legislative chair for the Association of Retired School Employees, and also my dad. I get that one right, Ty? Yeah, there we go. If the Senate will please make him welcome.
Senator from Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we have with us, seated in the President's Gallery, the chaperone for our honorary page, Robert Gross's mother, Jessica Cannell Gross, and she also happens to be the West Virginia School Service Personnel Person of the Year. If the Senate could please make her welcome.
Senator from Marion.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Today, seated in the President's Gallery, I have two folks I want to introduce. The first being a former member of this body. So on behalf of the entire state Senate, please welcome our friend Owen Browns back to the Senate. And also, Mr. President, accompanying Owens is Darrell Clausell. He's the West Virginia NAACP president for the whole state. Please welcome Darrell to the floor.
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I realize that I have another introduction. We have the chaperone for our honorary page, Aiden O'Quinn's mother here in the President's Gallery, Jennifer Clayton. Jennifer, please stand, and Senate join me and make her welcome.
Are there further introductions? Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2005, establishing the dual enrollment pilot program to be administered by the Higher Education Policy Commission and the Council for Community and Technical College Education in conjunction with the State Board of Education.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education.
House Bill 2309 to require the Division of Forestry to create an online renewal process no later than July 1, 2023.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2540, Travel Insurance Model Act.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Banking and Insurance and the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2605 relating to Good Samaritan Law.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2817 relating to Public Service Commission jurisdiction over alternative fuel for motor vehicles.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Energy, Industry, and Mining.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3044 relating to the annual fee for limited video lottery terminal permits.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3098 relating to West Virginia Summative Assessment and Formative Assessment.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3113 requiring high school students to complete course of study in personal finance.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education.
House Bill 3199 relating to removing the requirement that an ectopic pregnancy be reported.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3210 relating to the performance of installation of propane gas systems.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3261 relating to social workers' qualifications.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
House Bill 3272 relating to the operation of private trust companies in West Virginia.
Message will be received. Senior Senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the committee reference be dispensed with.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3302 to recognize unborn child as distinct victim in a DUI causing death.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3311 relating to wine alcohol by volume as compared to beer.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization. Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 61, providing personal property tax credit to graduates of certain higher education institutions or trade schools, and reports back to committee substitute for same, and Senate Bill 578, Hunger-Free Campus Act, and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the two committee substitutes do pass, but under the original double committee references, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Amy and Grady, Chair.
Report will be received and under the original double committee references, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 191 relating to liability for payment of court costs as condition of pretrial diversion agreement, and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 293, increasing fees charged by sheriff, and reports back to committee substitute for same, and Senate Bill 303 relating to Violent Crime Prevention Act, and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the two committee substitutes do pass. Respectfully submitted, Jack David Woodrum, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 430 relating to State Treasurer's authority to contract with financial institutions for banking goods and services, and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Bill 440 authorizing DOH pay current obligations from State Road Fund and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Bill 455 modifying certain used car restrictions and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 526, including early detection and diagnosis of Alzheimer's and other dementias in public health programs and services, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 559 relating to spousal privilege and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 562 relating to operation of private trust companies in West Virginia and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our question now is consent that the bill be referred to Committee on Rules.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 568 relating to Dangerousness Assessment Advisory Board and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 571 regulating fantasy gaming competitions and sports wagering through independent evaluations and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Jack David Woodrum, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 580 authorizing election for special levy renewal and Senate Bill 593 mandating cost of living salary adjustment policy for state employees and reports the same back with recommendation that they each do pass, but under the original double committee references, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Jack David Woodrum, Chair.
Report will be received. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the second committee reference for Senate Bill 580 be dispensed with.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Under the original double committee reference, Senate Bill 593 will be referred. Okay. Under the original double committee reference, Senate Bill 593 will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 605 requiring state medical examiner to enter into contracts with procurement organization and engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2845 relating to removing expired provisions from the code and reports the same back with recommendation that they each do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Energy, Industry, and Mining has had under consideration Senate Bill 609 obtaining approval for decommissioning or deconstructing of existing power plant and has amended same and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Ben Queen, Vice Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 3, naming the Dr. Roland P. Sharp Memorial Road, and reports back a committee substitute for same. Senate Concurrent Resolution 4, naming the Ira Noon Copley and Marie Copley Memorial Bridge, and reports back a committee substitute for same. And Senate Concurrent Resolution 6, naming the U.S. Army Sergeant Vincent DeBacco Memorial Bridge, and reports back a committee substitute for same. With the recommendation that the three committee substitutes be adopted, respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 8, naming the U.S. Army Private 2 Harold Richard Prumley Memorial Bridge, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2596 to modify when a non-resident student's transfer may be denied, and has amended same, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Amy N. Grady, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 3164 to extend the termination date of the West Virginia Advisory Council on Rare Diseases due to a delay in beginning its duties, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
Report will be received. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills, Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 631 through Senate Bill 651 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
Senior Senator from 17 requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill 631 through Senate Bill 651 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Resolution 32 by Senator Jeffries designating February 16, 2023 as West Virginia State University Day at the Legislature.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Motions. Petitions.
There are none.
Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to return to the fourth order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Energy, Industry, and Mining has had under consideration Senate Resolution 33 originating in committee, strongly urging West Virginia's congressional delegation to promote new construction of coal-fired electric generation facilities, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted, but with the further recommendation that it first be referred to the Committee on Rules. Respectfully submitted, Ben Queen, Vice Chair.
Report will be received. Senator from Harrison.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Unfinished business.
There is none.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 467, providing county commissioners ongoing mechanism to consider compensation increases for elected officials every 2 years. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 467 provides a means for county commissions to increase their salaries and those of other elected county officials without the legislature's involvement. Beginning on March 1st, 2024, and every other March 1st thereafter, the county commission would review the consumer price index and determine if the county's budget for the upcoming fiscal year was sufficient to allow an increase in the salaries of the county commissioners and the other elected county officials. If so, the county commission may increase those salaries in an amount up to the increase in the consumer price index over the preceding 2 years. The bill would still require county commissions and elected county officials to request any salary increase in writing that is signed and filed with the county clerk. I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine, ascertain the results. On this question, 28 yeas, 6 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting. Having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 2310, provide the Division of Motor Vehicles authority to develop an antique fleet program so that multiple antique motor vehicles may utilize a single registration plate.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our question unanimous consent that the bill be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed Committee Substitute for House Bill 2412, declaring November 14th every year a special Memorial Day in remembrance of the Marshall University airplane crash. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2412 would establish a special Memorial Day in remembrance of the 75 passengers who tragically lost their lives in the Marshall University airplane crash. The day would be known as Marshall University 75 Memorial Day. I'm happy to answer questions, but otherwise urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed? Oh, I'm sorry. Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, indeed, is a great day for Marshall University. We're finally making it a state holiday, but for the members of the plane crash that lost their lives that day. But I want to talk about two individuals from Upshur County that were recruited to Marshall in 1968. One was John Rocky Young. Now, this was before the movie Rocky came out, and the reason he was John Rocky Young, he was tall, an excellent athlete, basketball, football, long arms, and he loved to box, and there's no way I would get in a match with him. And the other member was Fred M. Godet. John was a tight end, and Fred was a defensive tackle. Fred escaped that crash because he had hurt his knee that fall and was off the team. Fred went on. He had a distinguished law enforcement career in Richmond, Virginia, and later in Upshur County, and became a public, he was our sheriff in Upshur County for 2 terms, magistrate, police chief, and then commissioner. And he almost always attended the Marshall University football game every fall that they remembered their football players in 1970. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Fred. When his son, Brian, was about 7 years old, Fred told Brian that, and we looked it up, and I don't think this was entirely true, but he said, "You know Jack Lambert?" Brian said, "Yeah, he's linebacker for the Steelers." He said, "Well, he was graduated from Kent State." He said, "You know that tooth he's got missing?" Brian said, "Yes." Fred held his fist up and said, "Right here is what knocked that tooth out." Well, Brian thought for a couple minutes, and he said, "Dad, Jack Lambert played defense for Kent State. You played defense for Marshall. There's no way that could have happened." And I don't know if it's just protocol, but I would like to have our members stand in silence to commemorate these players. Thank you.
Please rise. Thank you. Is there further discussion? Senator from Marshall.
President, thank you, Mr. President. My comments will be brief. After graduating from WVU, I spent 4 years at Marshall. And I started in Marshall in 1990. I didn't know about this. The first I heard about it was when I got down to Marshall. I don't know how I didn't know about this. But I became very emotional because I started looking into it. I mean, 75 people died. You know, there's 36 players. There's 25 administrators from the university, 9 coaches, 5 airline crew. And then the movie came out and it made everyone aware. I stand in support of this, and hopefully the whole state will know. This is the worst sports tragedy in the history of the United States. And this brings awareness to it, and just, let's all of us in West Virginia remember those that died, and I think it's a good bill, and I support it.
Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to talk for just a moment about the coach of this team who died. His name was Rick Tolley. He was a legendary basketball, football, and baseball coach at Mullins High School in Wyoming County. And soon after this crash, the football player or athlete of the year at Mullins High School was given the Rick Tolley Award. Anyway, Rick Tolley is remembered fondly in Mullins and throughout Wyoming County, and an outstanding man, and I support this completely. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senior Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a 15-year-old, this was left a real impact on my life. I was with some friends. We were in Canova, and it was raining really hard, and we were coming back, and we saw some ambulances go by, and we saw some fire trucks go by, and we were wondering what was going on, thought it was a small plane, then found out later at one of my friend's house. But let me talk about the impact that it had on the family. The senator from Marshall mentioned a few of the people that were on there. Let me also talk about, there was a House of Delegates member that was on this. There were city councilmen. There were 64 children that lost one or both parents. And it had an impact on the community. My mother was a professor at Marshall University. She had 4 students on the plane crash in her class. They had Marshall faculty go to a student athlete's funeral. My mom went to Lewisburg, North Carolina, and we became very close family with the Bob Patterson, friends with the Bob Patterson family. So this goes deep, and it goes rich. And I agree that you do not make this a holiday, but a day of remembrance is, because I remember it it really sort of shapes the fiber in you of what you are. This goes back to my days when I was watching these guys play in football, and I remember, listening to this on the radio. We didn't quite have the TV broadcast that we do today, but listening to the radio and how disappointed we were when they lost, but then hearing about this on the back. But let me talk about what was formed after that. One of the people that I think is one of the dearest guys I know in terms of is Red Dawson. Red Dawson was the coach that did not make went down on with the plane down to the game, but did not travel back. And we dedicated seats at the Keith Albee Theater, and we put Red Dawson as the transition seat because he's the glue between the ones that died in the plane crash and the young thundering herd. And Red Dawson to this day is a very, very cherished member of the Marshall community in Huntington. And I got to visit with Red this past September at great length, and Coach Lingle. Coach Lingle, who was the new coach after this. We got to visit with them. But for anybody that was in the area, the way that you saw it on the TV and the movie screen at the viaducts, where you would have one funeral procession at a light and another one going, I remember that distinctly. You had so many funerals and so many deaths and so many things happening there. But let me make one other point. Lefty Rollins, who formerly served in the House and in the Senate here from Wayne County. Lefty had to run the morgue. It was Rollins Funeral Home, and to this day, to the day that he died, he said that had more impact on him and changed his life more than anything. Thank you.
Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I was actually, if you've seen the Marshall movie, I was actually a freshman. I was on campus. I was in my car, just like the movie, when the news of the crash came on the radio. I was driving down 20th Street, leaving the varsity club. I was only 17, so I must have been drinking Pepsi or something like that, and I probably wasn't drinking a beer. But in my mind, I thought I should go out there. It literally crossed my mind that I should go out there to the plane crash site. Now, I don't know what I could have done to help, and the people that were out there certainly lived through, have memories and PTSD from that are indescribable, what that site looked like. But, just like winter leads to spring, these bad memories now lead us to, I think, a day of celebration. And we were talking about Coach Tolley, and I could talk about the Heath family, all these children that lost both their parents, and on, but we're celebrating the lives of those folks who tragically died in November of 1970. So I think it's a good day, and I'm glad that we're going to honor them for each year in this way from here on out. I'm the only person in this room that had a line in the Marshall movie. Kind of proud of that. And I will tell you that it has, in fact, people like Red Dawson, who stayed away from Marshall, stayed away from Marshall football. That movie brought a lot of people back together to deal with the loss, and they did it collectively. So I think this is another step along that healing process, and I appreciate being able to comment on that.
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a personal friend that was on the team, but he didn't go to the game because he was injured. I've never spoke to him about it. I heard he doesn't like to talk about it. As a kid, my parents pointed out to me on the side of the hill where the plane crash happened. And back in the 70s, late 70s, you could see, the bare spot on the side of the hill and the trees like growing in different directions, not straight up. I drove by there, I don't know, a few years back, and now that bare spot is gone. You can't really see it. But it's my alma mater, and I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results on this question. 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting. Having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to the comments made by our senators from Upshur, Senior from the 5th, Marshall, Cabell, and Senior from the 6th be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed House Bill 2882, making a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Economic Development. Third reading of the bill. The bill was advanced to third reading with the right to amend.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Phillips moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
Senator from Logan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Logan.
This strike and insert amendment would reduce the $115 million appropriation for direct transfer or surplus by $200,000 and create a new current expense surplus appropriation funded at $200,000. This portion of the amendment has a net zero effect on the total of this supplement. The amendment then adjusts the budget language to appropriate the $115 million in the following manner: $104,800,000 to the Economic Development Project Fund, $10 million to the Broadband Development Fund, and $200,000 to Southern West Virginia Community and Technical College for mine training and Energy Technology Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is real simple. We have an aging workforce in the mining field and coal mining. This is nothing more to try to sustain the workforce in the coal fields. Thank you.
Clerk has an amendment to the amendment.
Senator Smith moved to amend the amendment on page 2, section 1, line 23.
Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Tucker.
Okay, I move to amend the bill on page 2, line 22, by striking out the $115 million and inserting therefore $10 million. And then on page 2, line 26, striking out and inserting in lieu of $22,147,273. And on page 3, line 46 through 48, by striking from the above appropriation for direct transfer surplus, Fund 0256, $105 million shall be to the Economic Development Project Fund, and $10 million shall be transferred to the Broadband Development Fund, and then inserting thereof from the above appropriation for direct transfer surplus, $10 million shall be transferred to the Broadband Development Fund. So it changes. I mean, it reduces the funding, of course, and moves the appropriations around a little bit. And I'll be happy to answer questions and urge passage.
Is there discussion pertaining to the amendment to the amendment? Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have to respectfully stand in opposition to the amendment, and I'll discuss why. I think that the goal of what the senator is trying to get to is a laudable goal. I think we all want to see an increase in broadband here in the state of West Virginia. So this morning I had a conversation with state officials who oversee broadband, and they didn't request this money. They are not seeking additional funds. They talked in terms of the significant amount of federal money that's coming in to the state for broadband development, and that money is what is going to be used to increase broadband accessibility for all West Virginians, all across the state and all of our districts. And so for that reason, and several others, I don't think the gentleman's amendment is necessary. And also, I'd stand in opposition because if the gentleman's amendment to the amendment were adopted, it would singularly, in my mind, eradicate what is the focus of this supplemental appropriation, which is part and part the money that is to be appropriated for the manufacturing facility in Weirton. And we will soon, I'm sure, if the amendment fails, the amendment to the amendment fails, we'll have a discussion on that and what it means and what it is and what the deal is surrounding that project and what it is not. And so I think that in and of itself warrants discussion here on the Senate floor. Discussion of what that project is merits discussion. And so that is why I stand in opposition to this amendment, because should this amendment to the amendment be adopted, we don't get to that discussion. We don't get to discuss economic opportunities in this state. And so for reasons that this money is not necessary and we have a significant amount of federal funding coming in for broadband, and for the reason I just stated, I respectfully oppose the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion pertaining to the amendment to the amendment? If not, the question before the Senate is the question before the Senate is the vote of yea or nay. Excuse me, is anybody? Sorry, I lost my track here. The question is on adoption of the amendment to the amendment offered by the senator from Tucker. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. I declare it rejected. Are there further amendments to the bill? Or to the amendment?
No, sir.
Are there further amendments to the amendment?
Yes, sir. Senator Smith moved to amend the amendment on page 3, section 1, lines 47 and 48 by striking out the words Economic Development Project Fund 9069 and inserting in lieu thereof the words Water Development Authority Fund 3384.
Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to amend the bill on page 3, section 1, beginning on line 47, after the word the by striking Economic Development Project Fund 349069 and inserting in thereof the following: the Water Development Authority Fund. It's a pretty simple amendment. We know a project this magnitude is going to take a lot of development in water and sewer, and if we give them the $115 million, then we're going to come back and give them more money to develop the upgrade and develop the property. I know we've been told that it's ready, but I think we're all smart enough here in this body to know that the property is not ready for a project of this magnitude. And also it gives, the money that's not used can be used for water and sewer projects for the citizens of West Virginia. There's nobody in this body that doesn't have problem with water and sewer projects in their district, and this, gives the economic development properties money to expand this, and it also helps the citizens of West Virginia, who, by the way, we are sent here to represent. Thank you, Mr. President. I urge passage.
Further discussion? Senator from Brook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would have to stand and respectfully oppose the amendment to the amendment proposed by the gentleman. An amendment almost identical to this was proposed and rejected by the House of Delegates during their discussion on House Bill 2882. And that amendment, during the course of that amendment and the discussion on it, there was it was put forward that the head of the Water Development Authority hadn't requested this money, which they have not, and stated that it wasn't necessary for them to get their projects done. I sympathize with the senator. I know that there are a lot of water sewer projects around the state, a lot of infrastructure projects that are in necessary of upgrades or complete replacement. And so this morning I did some checking, and the Water Development Authority, which is included in the amendment to the amendment that's before us, there's an appropriation of $177 million of ARPA funds that is going to go to them for these types of projects. That was based on the conversation I had this morning. And so I think that it's important, before we vote on this amendment, to know that there is a significant amount of money, $177 million, that is going to be available for these projects. I also think, just as I said on the previous amendment to the amendment, that should this amendment to the amendment be adopted, it would then negate what is almost the main purpose of this supplemental, and that is the battery manufacturer to be built in Weirton. And so I think discussion of that project merits discussion here on the Senate floor. And so we should reject this amendment to the amendment to get to that discussion, have it here on the Senate, and fret out the merits of that facility. So I would respectfully oppose the gentleman's amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment to the amendment offered by the senator from Tucker. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. I declare the amendment rejected. Are there further amendments to the amendment?
No, sir.
Okay, is there discussion about, or excuse me, is there further discussion to the amendment offered by the senator from Logan? The senator from Logan.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you come down to my office, you'll see a replica of a poster that was on Ellis Island many years ago. And it says, "Help the boys in the trenches, mine more coal." Right now, at least 1,000 jobs, direct coal mining jobs, are available in West Virginia, not counting the jobs, the job shops like I work at, the CDL drivers that are needed. That's needed. I mean, there's so many needed jobs in the coal fields. This is no more than try to help get more coal miners trained, get them their certificate, get them working. We're talking $75,000 a year job start out. Could potentially, if they want to work, become an electrician, you're talking $120,000 a year job. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm encouraging you to vote for this amendment. And Mr. President, I do want the yeas and nays. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in respectful opposition to the gentleman's amendment, and I'll tell you why. I saw it in the system, I think it was last night, and I started to think about a point that the gentleman had made in a previous meeting about the assistance that they need in southern West Virginia, and the assistance that they need to help find workers to work in these mines. And so as I thought about that this morning and I thought about it last night, I made a call to the governor's office, and I talked with people in the governor's office. I also talked with our Secretary of Economic Development and was able to secure funds to do exactly what the senator's amendment does. There exists the Coalfield Economic Development Fund, and that's at the Department of Commerce. And that money can be redirected by the governor's office once the school requests that funding. And so in the gentleman's amendment, the money was to go to Southern Community College. And so all the school has to do now is make that request to the governor's office. And the governor's office has told me that they will redirect those funds in the amount that the gentleman is requesting in his amendment to the school from that fund to get accomplished the precise goal that the gentleman is setting out for in this amendment. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the amendment, in my mind, is not necessary because, look, here in the Senate, I'm not deaf to hear the concerns from the senator from Logan. I understand them. I have been to southern West Virginia many times. I have seen that part of the state and the difficulties that it faced. And so that is why I wanted to do what we do here in the Senate, Mr. President, and that's take a look at the entire state and help the entire state. And so that is why I wanted to see if there was anything that could be done to address his concerns in this amendment without the amendment, and there is. The Coalfield Economic Development Fund. And so all the school will have to do is request the money, and it will be there for this. And so for that reason, I would have to respectfully oppose the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Marshall.
Mr. President, I too would respectfully oppose the amendment because I think it can be a win and a win. As the senator from Brooke just pointed out, the money which is intended in this amendment to go to the community college can be there, and they can benefit from that. They can train more so he can accomplish his goal. The job up in Weirton, this energy, doesn't just help District 1. It helps the whole Ohio Valley, which is District 1 and District 2. 750 jobs, $63,000 average salary per job. That's huge for this area that has been so depressed with economic opportunities. It'll be a game changer, the beginning of a game changer. It's a small percentage of the acreage at that site for development. And we all know that once somebody goes in, they all follow. This is going to be, as we heard the presentation from the Secretary from Economic Development, This is going to be a game changer. And, you know, yes, it helps District 1. Yes, it helps District 2. It helps the whole state. And the great cause of training the miners, more miners that the amendment attempts to do will still be feasible, as the Senator from Brook pointed out. So I think everyone can win on this, and I would, for that reason, encourage a no vote.
Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment and the gentleman from Marshall. This does not change any of the money appropriated to the project in your area. This is just to reallocate money that is already in there. I think it's a very simple request from the gentleman from Logan. It does not do anything to affect the bill, change any of the money. Unlike my previous two amendments, all this is trying to emphasize that you know, there's a problem there, and especially in southern West Virginia. You know, I sympathize with the people in southern West Virginia because they've been taken advantage of for so many years. And this is just I mean, we're talking 200,000. We're going to give $115 million for a project in one district, but we're unwilling to give an extra $200,000 in another economically severely depressed area. And with all due respect from the gentleman from, I forget what district, Brook, thank you. I don't take a whole lot of faith in what promises the governor gives. He's had people up here pushing this bill. Many of you know that you've been talked to, trying to secure your vote. About any promise can be made right now to get this through. So the old saying, one in the hand is worth more than two in the bush. This is a good example of that. This is guaranteed that the gentleman's concerns, and it has nothing to do with my district, but it does with the gentleman from Logan. It'll cover several of your counties down in southern West Virginia, this training and the extra $200,000. And I think it's just, I mean, it's just a small token when we're looking at the big picture. We're saying, all right, we're going to give a out-of-state company that is against all of our values and even our industry, we're going to give them $115 million, but we're not worried about Logan, Boone, McDowell, Lincoln, the southern coal fields. We'll get them money maybe next session. We'll get them some money sometime. This here would qualify that we are going to give them an additional $200,000 for training. It's a small token, and I think we owe it to them. And it's not a big deal. I mean, I hate to say $200,000 isn't a big deal. In my world, $200,000 is a great big deal. But in the grand scheme of the $115 million, and it does nothing to the project, I mean, the district that this project's going into, this does not affect your bottom line, your money. All it does is help our colleague from Logan County to help address a problem he has in his district. For those reasons, I urge a strong support for this amendment.
Is there further discussion on the amendment before I recognize the Senator from Randolph?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't even really going to talk about the amendment. I was going to wait for the bill, but the Senator from Tucker sort of brought to my mind that maybe I should get up and talk about this a little bit. I think everybody in this room is very well aware that it's not hard to find references on this particular company's website about how they intend to end the coal industry and end the national gas industry. Senator from Tucker mentioned some of the other things that they really don't like about West Virginia, just the values that we have here in West Virginia as well. But on this amendment in particular, they're going to come in, we're going to give $300 million to a company that says they want to end the coal industry, and what the senator from Logan is simply asking for is if you're going to destroy all of these jobs maybe we should have just a little bit, $200,000. You know, that's not even 0.1% of what we're going to give this company, not even 0.1% to go to help with retraining people that are going to be displaced out of work if this company is successful, which I assume we're not giving them $300 million hoping they fail. So if we give them $300 million and they're successful in what it is that we supposedly want them to do, it's going to destroy a lot of coal jobs down in southern West Virginia and in my district and around the whole state of West Virginia when we get to the natural gas industry, particularly in the northwestern part of the state. $200,000 to help with retraining, it is not even a drop in the bucket. It's not even a half a drop in the bucket for what's going to be necessary when that industry gets wiped out, assuming Form Industry actually accomplishes the mission that they've stated they want to accomplish. So I don't think it's enough, but it is just the tiniest little token to say we haven't forgot about you to the people down in southern West Virginia. So I support the amendment, and I hope you will too. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just stand in opposition to the gentleman's amendment. You know, being from Logan County, I can tell you it's devastating. My father was a coal miner, and when I grew up, the streets were packed, and it was a booming little place. And to go back and go through the coal fields right now, it absolutely is heartbreaking. And I know we have said many times on this floor, there is so much more to a paycheck than money. It is the personal benefit that not only the person with the job, but the whole family gains from that. The effect, the ripple down effect from the not only just the local economy, but from the schools, from the family values, from the family unit. I came to the Senate, and I remember very vividly that everybody was here to create jobs for West Virginia. That creates prosperity. We should be doing everything in our power to create every kind of job. Do some companies, in fact, do all major companies have statements of diversity? And yes, if that's the case, let's get rid of all car dealerships and Coca-Cola and everything else. Every company does that. We've toured all over the country this past year trying to get companies to move to West Virginia. So I would imagine, being from the Willing area, Weirton Steel, I was never up there. I never saw the steel mills running, but I would imagine that was some sight to behold in the day. And to be driving through that and seeing what once was has to be heartbreaking for that part of our state. So if we've got an opportunity, which our Secretary of Commerce says it's not just 750 jobs, there's a trickle-down effect, there's over 4,000 jobs. How can we stand here when we've got the potential to create 4,000 jobs for the state of West Virginia, and we're going to, this isn't picking winners and losers, or it shouldn't be. It should all be about picking winners, promoting prosperity, giving opportunity, and for those reasons, I stand in opposition to the gentleman's amendment.
Is there further discussion to the gentleman's amendment? Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in opposition to the Senator's amendment for a reason that really hasn't been discussed yet. On the merits, on the substance, I'm with you. You know, I will vote for a separate measure to provide for funding that the senator, distinguished senator from Logan, seeks for his district. I think the Senate has a good record over the years that I've been here of enacting measures, trying to enact measures that will revitalize our coal industry. I'm for it. I'm for it 100%. What's happened in the coal fields of West Virginia has been unfairly foisted upon this state by the federal government in many ways, and I'm not against measures that will help. I'll vote for one, whether it's a supplemental. If our distinguished finance chair can find a way to put that money in the budget bill that we're going to pass this year, I'm voting for it. I will vote for it. My opposition to it in this bill is for the simple reason that it puts the bill in a form different from that which the House of Delegates has passed. If we pass this bill without an amendment within it, we have complete legislative action. We finished. And we will have done something on this bill that can then be enrolled and presented to the governor for him to decide whether it's worthy of his signature or whether he wants to veto it. But we will finish it. And I'm worried personally, I'm personally worried that if we have to send the bill back, Mr. President, to the House of Delegates, and we send it back in a different form, I don't know what will happen. And so why is it important that we get it passed and get it to the governor? I've never lived in the Northern Panhandle, but when I came to the House of Delegates, Mr. President, 30 years ago, it's hard to believe now, but it was 30 years ago, Weirton Steel was the biggest private employer in the state of West Virginia, and it's gone. There were over 10,000 employees at Weirton Steel when I got to the House of Delegates. You don't have to go back too much earlier before that when it had, I think, 14 or 15,000 employees. But they're gone. They're gone. My only worry about the amendment to the bill is that it will jeopardize what I think is a decent and bona fide effort to revitalize what Hancock and Brooke County once had. We're not gonna have 10,000 employees back there again quickly, but it's a start, Mr. President. It is a step in the right direction. I think the administration and the Economic Development Office have done a pretty good job of negotiating some protections in this thing. Let's do something for the coal fields. Let's do something for Logan County, but not in this bill. Not this bill. It jeopardizes what we're trying to do in the Northern Panhandle, which needs it badly. That's a part of the state that has suffered in many ways just as the coal fields have. So I will oppose the amendment to the bill, but not the concept, not future action, Mr. President. And I'm bothered a little bit by, comments that people make about coal. It upsets me whenever I hear it. But that's not what this business will do if it thrives and succeeds in West Virginia, despite the fact that somebody apparently made an inappropriate comment. One of those we hear all the time. We hear them from Washington all the time. As I understand it, this business is going to build batteries to store electricity, which is still, in a very large degree, at least around here, is generated by coal, by natural gas. This bill is not the right place, in my opinion, to make another statement, which I'm prepared. I stand here prepared to add my voice to the chorus of those in southern West Virginia and elsewhere in this state who want to make that statement. I'll make it with you. This bill is not the right place for it. I urge the rejection of the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to my friend from Logan's amendment, and I feel compelled to speak to this. I was a 20-plus year coal miner, and I spent the last 22 years of my career representing coal miners. So I know what's going to be flying around out there, that Caputo's against coal. He's turned his back on his brethren. He's turned his back on the industry. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I think this distinguished judiciary chair really laid out the argument. I would absolutely support moving that money to the southern West Virginia coal fields in another piece of legislation. I think it's a great idea the senator has. And I think that we need to move in that direction. And we have tried for years, Mr. President, to move money into coalfield development and try to revitalize the coal fields of West Virginia. You know, I'm only about an hour and a half from Weirton. And my aunts and uncles lived in steel country in Monessen, Pennsylvania. And they all made their living there. And that town is now nothing. Tens of thousands of people, now nothing. I cannot turn my back on something that could revitalize a portion of West Virginia such as this. Now, I know the statements that Form Energy made. I don't like that. But I think it was said here earlier, most new industries are making green statements, that they want to have greener fuel for their production. We're seeing it everywhere. I mean, if I'm going to get angry at everybody that says something like that, then we're not going to have any friends left. And we're not going to compel new industry to come to West Virginia. I mean, you know, we always refer back to the buggy whip, Mr. President. I'm sure the buggy whip manufacturers was really upset when the automobile came along, right? But things change over the years. The thought process changes. And I don't know how much electric generation is going to be needed to fire this plant. But I know one thing, most of West Virginia's electric is generated by coal. And I think that's going to be good for the industry that I grew up in and the industry that I worked in. And I know I'm straying a little bit and talking more about the bill than the amendment, but I think, give me a little latitude, they do tie together. You know, I think it's very noble that he wants to take money back to Southern coal fields. And I want to say, if this opportunity right here, if this opportunity or one similar to this was in Southern West Virginia, I would support it just as vigorously as I support it in the Northern Panhandle. We need these jobs in West Virginia. We've lost population in the tens of thousands in the last 8 or 10 years. We need something to make people want to come back here. We want our kids to stay here. We want people to move here. I heard you say you wanted 400,000 people to move to West Virginia when you did your acceptance speech a few years ago. We agree on that. We totally agree on that. And this is the way to do that in West Virginia. There's some other projects that have moved here. They're moving here because we got a great work ethic, we got a beautiful countryside, and we got good people. And that's why they're coming here. This is nothing against, in my opinion, the coal industry. I mean, if I thought it was going to destroy the coal industry and the people that paid my wages for the last 22 years and the industry that paid my wages the 20 years before that, I would be absolutely against that. But I'll close with this. If we shut this down, they're just going to go somewhere else. They're not going to just say, oh, West Virginia don't want us, forget this project. We're not going to do it. It's never going to happen. They're just going to go somewhere else, and we will miss an opportunity of a lifetime for generations to come. So with all due respect, I oppose the senator and my friend from Logan's amendment.
Further discussion. Senator anybody before I recognize the Senator from Tucker for the second time? Senator from Tucker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I ask that the remarks from the Senator from Marion be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Is there further discussion? Senator from Logan to close debate on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, heck, if I'd known it was that easy to get 200, I'd ask for a lot more. I'm not asking to kill the bill. I'm only asking for 200,000. For every coal job, there's 5 created. The person that works at Wendy's, McDonald's, Keith's Bar and Grill in my hometown of Man. Ladies and gentlemen, a vote against this is a vote against your coal miner, your conductor on the train, your school teachers in the coal fields, everybody. This is real simple. I'm asking for 200,000. I'm leaving 104,800,000 for this new company. I'm speaking to the amendment, not the bill. I'm asking you to vote yes, green with me. And Mr. President, I have asked for the yeas and nays. Thank you.
Question before the Senate is adoption of amendment offered by the senator from Logan. The yeas and nays have been demanded by the senator from Logan. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 14 yeas, 20 nays, 0 absent, not voting. Less than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the amendment rejected. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The question now is on passage of the bill. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2882 is a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Economic Development. The bill would appropriate $115 million from the unappropriated surplus balance for fiscal year 2023 to a newly created appropriation within the department. The supplemental that then adds directive language to transfer $105 million to the Economic Development Project Fund and $10 million to the Broadband Development Fund. And Mr. President, I'm going to take a minute here to explain a little bit about what the one important part of this bill. There is one part of this bill that I'm sure all of the discussion will center around today, and that is most likely what appears on line 24, and that's the BRIM premium for $3,000. Of course, I'm being facetious because the big part of this supplemental is the $105 million transfer to the Economic Development Project Fund. And that, of course, is Form Energy, the battery manufacturer that we've been discussing that would relocate or locate in the city of Weirton. And I want to talk a little bit about this. Should this supplemental appropriation be passed, no company, not Form, not any other company, is getting money. This is not a cash giveaway. We are not giving money directly to this company. In this deal, in the deal that our Secretary of Economic Development, our Department of Economic Development has, is that the money that is appropriated will go into an escrow account, only to be released at 3 different intervals when certain benchmarks are hit by this company. And those benchmarks include customer contracts in which they've entered into, the number of jobs that they employ at the site, and their private investment into the project. If they don't hit those marks, then no money is released from that escrow account. So let's be clear on this point. No money is being given to this company. And for over the next 6 years, the state has collateral and security in this project in order to protect the state's investment, and that collateral and security is that it will own both the property and the building that will be built there. In no other economic incentive package that this state has entered into with a new employer have we had any security whatsoever. If that company failed, we had no security, we had no collateral. That was it. But in this, we actually have something. If Form is successful, then we've got a tremendous economic driver in our state. If they are not successful, because of that collateral that we have, then the state will own a manufacturing site located on 55 acres of what I believe to be the most prime real estate in this state in order for manufacturing or industrial activity to occur. It's the former Weirton Steel site. It's 55 acres of the former Weirton Steel site. That land has direct access to the river, to rail, and to major road systems. And additionally, during this period of time, Form is going to be paying market lease payments to the state in tens of millions of dollars. And so we're not giving them any money. They're actually giving the state of West Virginia money for their lease payments, tens of millions of dollars. And so I just want to outline what this deal is, but then I want to outline very quickly what the company does and the product that they make. So we're talking about iron air batteries. These aren't lithium-ion batteries that are made from rare earth elements that are overwhelmingly mined and processed in foreign countries. These are made from materials that are found here in the United States of America, iron ore. There are massive iron ore fields, Minnesota, Michigan, used to be brought in by barge to Weirton Steel. And so that is what this company does. Now, I've heard a lot of discussion about coal. This has nothing to do with coal, and you're going to hear a lot about that today. And I've heard the comments that were made, and I don't agree with them. But there have been comments made and policies adopted by companies that we have brought to the state of West Virginia, and I didn't agree with either. But this has nothing to do with coal, because Forum Energy is agnostic as to who they sell their batteries to. It doesn't matter who they sell their batteries to. They have contracts now in place to sell their batteries to energy providers, like those who are in our state. And those energy producers make electricity from the same methods that we use here in the state of West Virginia. They are agnostic as to who they sell these batteries to. And so I wanted to give everybody the basics of the deal, the basics of this company, and what it is and what it is not. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion today, Mr. President, and I look forward to closing on this bill. I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there further discussion? Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield? The gentleman yields.
First of all, I want to commend you on your passion for your district, and I understand it totally. This is nothing personal, but it just, this particular bill just doesn't sit with me. I've got the what is it, the MOA agreement that with the economic development. And the one that's on page 3 of it, section B, I'm not going to read the whole thing, just down here where it goes. I don't know, you have a copy of it on page 3, section B there towards the end. It says, however, to the extent that foreign is the applicant or recipient of federal or state grant funds, Forum may reject grant funds if the terms and conditions are not in Forum's best business or Forum's business interest. In this case, the state, I repeat, the state will backstop the amount of funds at issue to ensure no changes in the overall economic development financial assistance. The way I read that is if they turn down any of the federal money or any of the state grant money, then we as a state have to we have to cover that. We have to backfill that if they decide they don't want that money. If there's some stipulation to them that they don't like or whatever, then we have to backfill that as a state. Is that correct?
So my reading of that is that, you know, you're talking about federal funds, and maybe you're talking about there was the transportation or the infrastructure bill. There was also the Inflation Reduction Act, and so I would then refer you to page 2, the bottom, where there's a table, and that outlines the funding that is to be put into the escrow account, and that amount right there, total and cumulative, which is $290 million, is the sole amount that will be put into the escrow account. And so I do not read the portion that you pointed out to there on page 3 is any additional funding, but solely refers to that 290 mark that goes into the escrow account.
So we're putting $290 million in an escrow account to cover this, if this happens? Is that what you're...
So
Sorry.
over time, that is the expected escrow amount. This deals with a certain portion of that. An earlier portion has already been funded by our state's EDA. And so that represents the limit as to what would be put into the escrow.
Okay. So overall, what's the total amount that we've committed? Because you mentioned the EDA has put money into it also. What is the total amount of state money that is going to be put in it?
The EDA, they did 75 million. And so then there's this, should this piece of legislation pass today, that's the 115 that's before us.
Okay, but if they decide not to take this money from the federal or state grants, then we as a state will take the money out of that escrow account that we put in there to cover that. Is that, I apologize, I don't understand.
So there are specific delineations of the release of funds. Actually, it's not even, we're not releasing them to any entity that is not a state entity, and I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
If you go to, beginning on page 4 of the MOA, that there are, the title to section 4 is Phases and Employment Thresholds and Capital Investments. The release of funding for construction, improvements to the site, that's laid out through there, through phase 1, 2, 3. And so that begins the scheduling, the release of the funding and the benchmarks that I made reference to.
So that's sort of like an insurance account in case something does unforeseen happen, so it doesn't throw the project off.
That's the security and the collateral that I made reference to, yes.
But the bottom line is still that we've committed to cover that. Okay, and then on page 8, on the total project completion, on item 3 there, it says, I'm not going to read the whole thing. This is when about transferring the title to the project land and any improvements thereon, including the phase 1 building, phase 2 building, and phase 3 building, to form or to a third party or designee as may be requested by form for the purchase price of $1. So the way I read that is form can request that the land be transferred to one of their other entities, correct? It won't, I mean, it's what it says. Maybe you're the attorney.
So my reading of that would be, what if over the next period of 6 years, Form Energy is purchased by Company A? I'm just making something up. And so the language that you just referred to, designee, Form Energy no longer exists. Company A purchased it and renamed it Company A. And so that language there, to me, you know, I draft deeds and talk about representatives, successors, assignees. And so that would allow for the purchaser who renamed Form to be able to, because if you just left Form and over the next 6 years Form sells to Company A, Form no longer exists. Company A is now manufacturing the batteries at that location. And so they then would be the party of which the property would be transferred to.
Okay, but they can, but the way I read this, they can transfer it to a third party, which I understand what you're saying there. But if they're still Form Energy and they want it transferred to anybody, they can. If it's a designee, I mean, it wouldn't even have to be one of their companies, would it?
Now, so let's back up here a second, because you're talking about 6 years down the road at the very earliest. You're talking about 2029, and that is when it is contemplated that at the earliest that total project completion would occur. And you're talking about, again, only a circumstance in which all of the benchmarks in terms of employees, capital investment, and customer contracts have all been met. And so upon that time, and that's when they, in particular of interest would be the 750 employee mark. At the 750 employee mark, and the other benchmarks have been met, the property will be transferred to Form. That is, you're correct, that is in the agreement. And so upon that time, if Form would have received the property, if they would have been transferred that property, they do have, per the terms of this, to transfer to a third party or designee, which again is not limited to, but is someone who drafts contracts and drafts deeds. That language would allow for, if they are purchased, if they are acquired, renamed, and owned by a different entity than how it exists now, that allows for that to happen.
So they, at that point, basically, layman's terms, help me out here. At that point, they own the property and basically can do what they want because they filled their obligations.
Provided that they have filled all of their obligations, you were correct.
Okay, so they can give it to or anyone they want to then. Okay, thank you. And
if I could, if I were their legal counsel, I would advise against them giving away 55 acres and a 450,000 square foot manufacturing facility, but that's just me.
Might be a nasty divorce involved or something.
That'd be one divorce.
Okay, and on page 11, on item 6 there, under the full-time employee, where it says, for the purpose of the MOA, a direct employee who receives paid benefits on average work at least 140 hours per month shall be considered a full-time equivalent employee. Okay, the full-time equivalent employees does not include independent contractors who work for Form at the project or elsewhere. And the state of West Virginia will make its best efforts to support Form in achieving the important targets. But what caught my eye there, where I come from, 160 hours a week is considered a full-time employee. And this here language here is 140 hours. Boy, I hate to get into a discussion with math because that's my weakest, one of my weakest subjects. So 140 hours, I mean, that's 20 hours per month left. So say someone works 36 hours a week, where say they work them 36 hours a week. So a lot of companies do it. I'm not going to mention any of the companies, but everyone here knows companies that don't provide the 40 hours a week, so they don't have to provide the full benefits. So with 160 hours a week, they could be part-time employees that is basically being considered full-time employees as far as this phrase goes here. Is that correct? Because 160 hours that's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
So a lot of places, and I don't practice labor and employment law, but a lot of places have an 8-hour workday, but you have a 1-hour break. And so I was doing the math in my head as you were speaking, and so if you had an 8-hour shift, but you worked 7 because you had your hour break, 7 times 5 would be 35 times, if you're doing on a 2-week pay schedule, that's 70 hours. And then if you multiply 70 times 2, that gets you to 140 hours. And so you're still meeting the threshold for the definition of a full-time employee should you be working 7 hours during that day because you have an hour break.
Yeah, I agree. But most companies either they don't dock them an hour for lunch. They either pay them or extend their hours where they have to work the extra hour. I mean, that's most companies. But will you agree that this kind of gives them a loophole to include part-time employees on this? Because they could work them 30, 36 hours a week and still be within this perimeter here and still receive or be able to count them as full-time employees.
No, I would not agree with you because I do know of a number of companies where individuals will work 3 12s, and that puts them at 36 hours for the week, and they're full-time employees. And that would, if you're working 36 hours a week, that would put you above the 140 hours that's in here. And so wouldn't be able to agree with you.
I understand what you're saying there, because we do the same thing at our operation, but we pay them 40 hours. They only, because they're working the 3 12-hour days, and then we pay them for the 40 hours, so they're considered full-time employees. It's a kind of a bonus to get you to work unpreferred shifts or weekends or whatever. But what I'm saying is this does create a loophole where if they was only working them 30 hours or 36 hours a week, wasn't considering them as full-time employees, this language allows them to consider them full-time employees, correct?
Well, here I would direct you to language where it says a direct employee who receives paid benefits. And so, again, I don't practice labor and employment law, but I don't know many companies that receive or that pay benefits such as health care, retirement, that kind of thing to part-time employees. And so I think that the interpretation of what a full-time employee is per this definition, I think meets the definitional standards, because again, these are people who are receiving paid benefits such as health care, such as a retirement package, and are working above what, now again, you know, we're talking about working that 7-hour day, even if they have an 8-hour shift, and meeting the definitional standard of a full-time employee.
But the main clause in here is the 140 hours per month, no matter, I mean, as long as they reach the 140-hour threshold, they're considered, because paid benefits. I've worked for companies all my life, and I know some of the tricks and leverages that can be used legally to do that. That's all I have on it. But this does cover, if an employee works at least 140 hours a week, they're considered full-time employees, correct?
As long as they are receiving paid benefits and on average works at least 140 hours per month.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, the parties. Okay, on page 14 on assignment, the parties agree that this MOA may assign to a wholly owned subsidiary or affiliate of form upon such request by form. So form has to request it. The WVDED agrees to take any such actions as may be necessary to the assignment of this MOA and to any wholly owned subsidiary or affiliate of form. So can you explain that? I mean, that's, sorry.
Sure. So let's say that you have Form Energy, big Form Energy. And so Form Energy then creates a subsidiary, Form Energy Weirton, Form Energy West Virginia. That part of the agreement, which that's a pretty standard clause, and when you come into transactional contracts such as this, it allows for the subsidiary or affiliate of Form, which would be Form Weirton, to be a party and for this MOA to be assigned to them, because Form Energy parent company is not who is performing to the standards of this contract. It is their subsidiary, Form Energy Weirton.
Okay. Then what would an affiliate be? Would that be just,
could
that be a company that they're affiliated with, like say they have a construction company? I mean, they don't have it, but they're affiliated with one. Say they're the one that did all the work. So it doesn't have to be a formed company. It just be a company that they're affiliated with. Is that the way I read it?
So how are you defining affiliate?
I was just reading the language. Subsidiary or affiliated or affiliate of Form. So that would be, it could be a company, a spin-off company of Form, or it could be just a company they're affiliated with, correct?
So I'm a little confused as to what the definition that you're assigning to affiliate, because again, we're going back to wholly owned, it's wholly owned subsidiary or affiliate. And so affiliate is, again, corporate transactional law aside, we're talking about a business that is a part of the parent company, the holding company, whatever you would want to call it.
And that would be the subsidiary of that company. Would that also
I think it applies to both of the terms that you're discussing.
So you're saying that the affiliate would be a formed company?
That would be my interpretation, yes.
Would it be in a court of law, their interpretation also?
As a lawyer, I never take a gander or a guess of what the court would try to do.
Would say that's a compliment. You look smart enough to answer a question.
Now, and I will also say to my friend Tucker that I did not draft, obviously, this MOA, so I'm merely just providing some commentary as you were asking these questions.
I understand that. I appreciate it. It was just, these are things, looking at the agreement, that stuck out to me that would be loopholes to...
I don't, again, I didn't draft this document, but I don't view any of your concerns rising to the level of what would be a loophole. I think that, as you read through it, if you don't have a whole lot of experience with this stuff, and having experience with drafting these contracts means that you might also enjoy having experience with watching paint dry. I don't view this contract to have loopholes that would allow for some sort of funny business to take place, so to speak.
And, you can imagine a layman like me who's never basically seen this before, never been able to ask any questions or anything. Why,
well,
that's why I depend on you, because you're an attorney, and I knew you'd be up to date on this. So I appreciate you answering my questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Senator from Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. President. Back home, I talk to people, they think we come down here to Charleston and we sit in a smoke-filled room in the back drinking whiskey and shooting craps, and I think they'd be surprised to find out that the crap shoots out here on the floor. This is where the rolling of the dice occurs. This is where the gambling is occurring. I've supported a lot of these economic development projects, but they've always been for established companies. Nucor is a major player already. They're not asking us to bet $300 million on something that they've never produced. They've made a lot of steel. So when we approved that project, we were betting on a more of a sure thing, I think. But in this case, we've got a company that's a battery company that's never made a battery. I don't know how you could call that anything other than a wild gamble. I've heard some people refer to this as being similar to Obama's big bet on Solyndra with the solar panels. And I'll just touch on something real quick, because I'm looking at an economic impact statement that came from WVU. And right at the very top in the introduction, it says that the data for this study were provided by the West Virginia Development Office and was not independently audited by the authors of the study. So they never actually verified that any of this data was real. And of course, the Development Office got the data, as I understand it, directly from Form Energy. So this study is based on whatever data Form Energy provided to the Development Office. So we're trusting a company that's never made a product on the data. And I'll compare that in part to Solyndra, because, as we all know, Solyndra made some huge promises and then blew through $1 billion, and then the whole thing collapsed in bankruptcy. The Office of the Inspector General for the Department of Energy, which was very much tied to that project, had this to say about it. It says that our investigation confirmed that during the loan guarantee application process, and while drawing down loan proceeds, Solyndra provided the department with statements, assertions, and certifications that were inaccurate and misleading, misrepresented known facts, and in some instances omitted information that was highly relevant to key decisions in the process to award and execute the $535 million loan guarantee. In our view, the investigative record suggests that the actions of certain Solyndra officials were, at best, reckless and irresponsible, or at worst, an orchestrated effort to knowingly and intentionally deceive and mislead the department. That's what you wind up with when you take their information to do your economic study. And it's what we are winding up with here today on the floor, because we've never had a chance to test this data. We've never had a chance to have people come in and testify to the veracity of this data. We've never had an opportunity to ask people come in and prove that what they're saying is accurate. And I think that that deserves that opportunity, in part because one of the things I've seen floating around indicates that the data that Solyndra provided is going to pay $600,000 per year to the employees that they're creating these jobs for. Now, if they do, that's an amazingly good job for West Virginia, $600,000 a year, but I don't think it's realistic. I don't think anybody in here thinks it's realistic. But that's the kind of data that was provided, which sounds very much like the very misleading and inaccurate data that was provided by Solyndra to the U.S. Department of Energy whenever they got their big, massive loan. So if this had been allowed to go through the normal process, I have no doubt the chair of finance and the members on the finance committee would have been given an opportunity to ask these kinds of hard questions. They would have been given an opportunity to test the statements that were made, and we may have found out that not every statement was made, whether it was inaccurate accidentally or inaccurate because these guys are looking at a $300 million investment from the state of West Virginia. And my understanding is they've got about $800 million raised in other places, which is a lot of money, and it's even more than we're investing. But as I also understand it, if we do this, the state of West Virginia will be the largest investor in Form Energy. We're making the biggest bet of anybody in an unproven startup company. When government gets involved in making untested and unverified investments into startup companies, we get Solyndras. That's what happens. You know, there's nobody in this room that I'm aware of that has ever invested $300 million in anything like this. So we don't have anybody in here right now that's an expert, and the experts that we did ask to look at it just took the data that they were provided by the company, and we're going to run with that. That's even before we get to the question which I raised earlier related to the amendment of investing in a company that, if they're successful, is going to cost who knows how many jobs in southern West Virginia's coal fields and the coal mines in my district. Normally, everybody in this room and at the other end of the building worries about the voters voting them out of a job. In this particular case, when we're talking about the coal miners, we're voting them out of a job. And they're probably not even going to know that we voted them out of a job until they're working at a Walmart in Florida before they realize that the guys back home that they trusted to look after them voted them out of a job. We've actually reversed that whole election process. Instead of them voting us out of a job, we're voting them out of a job. If we pass this, it's a gamble. The state of Ohio, as I understand it, rejected it. Now, I know Solyndra can test that, but it sounds like 16-year-old dating partners deciding who broke up with who. But other states have not signed on to this because this is a very risky investment. This is a very high-risk investment. Similar investments in other cases have failed. We shouldn't invest in startups. We just shouldn't be investing in startup companies. Nobody in here knows this technology that well. Nobody in here can testify that this is a real product, but we're going to blow $300 million. And where do we get that $300 million? At least some of it's coming from the coal severance tax that those miners and oil and gas field workers in West Virginia worked very hard to produce, hoping that we would invest it wisely in things like roads and bridges, but also in economic development projects, but not economic development projects that were designed to kill their job. So, I think that we frankly should slow this down. We frankly should be asking the hard questions in committee. Apparently, that's not the way we're going to handle this particular bill. But, Mr. President, I think that we should have handled it that way. I can't support this bill as it currently is, not because the project in the end is a horrible project, but I don't think it's responsible for us to gamble with hardworking people's tax dollars without having any real idea what's going to happen, without properly vetting the spend of those tax dollars. And so I urge rejection.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Logan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to speak to the bill.
Yeah, oh, yes.
I wasn't sure how I was going to start this out, but in 2018, I ran for Congress, and I was getting an interview by a guy over the phone. And 17 minutes into the interview, he said, "Rupee, can I stop you and ask you a question?" He said, "Not one time have you mentioned coal in the 17 minutes of this interview. Why is that?" Because everybody knows you fight for coal. I said, "Well, you got to look, in my House district that I was serving at the time was made up of all of coal." So I explained to him, how Beckley, you take Raleigh County, oh my God, Mr. President, you got I-77 and I-64, it runs through there. You got rail, you got a great airport. But you know what? We're not seeing any economic development down in southern West Virginia. And I explained this to this gentleman. I said, I'm running for 18 counties, and there's a lot more need than just coal in those 18 counties. It's my understanding this technology was developed by Westinghouse in the 70s. That's, over 50 years ago, early 70s. Why is it taking so long to get here now? Let's look at two of the big investors. They're two of the richest men in the world, Gates and Bezos. They could buy this state, the budget, between them probably 50 times with the federal dollars. If they're so interested in this technology, why do they need our money? I'm going to tell you how they become billionaires. It's stuff like this. If you've ever seen a pig with lipstick, this bill's it. You look at it. Public service for employee benefits, National Youth Science Camp, ARC assessment, Global Economic Development Partnerships, and BRIM, Hatfield McCoy Recreational Trail. I mean, that's just a lot of lipstick sitting on a pig. At the end of the day, it's still a pig. It's a Trojan horse. We're letting a company come in here that does not support West Virginia. In the MOA, it says, forms multi-day battery will reform the global electricity system to reliable, run on 100% low-cost renewable energy every day of the year. Why is it low cost? Let me tell you why. Subsidies, federal subsidies from D.C. That's how these wind and solar plants, windmills and solar panels work, subsidies. I've been to 3 energy meetings last year, and I've said this, y'all have heard this before, and at each one of them, they said renewables don't work. Let me say it again. They said renewables don't work. One gentleman was asked a question, I think he's a big shot at, University of Houston, about battery storage. He said, forget it. He said, if you took all the batteries in the world right now and put them together, you got enough electricity for like 5 seconds. 5 seconds, all the batteries in the world. So someone asked him, could you build a battery big enough to sustain a city for 30 days? He said, let's take Denver, for example. You could build a battery, and I forgot the size he said, but it was bigger than the state of West Virginia that would last them for 30 days. Oh, by the way, this is lithium-ion batteries. I know this is air-iron battery. Again, that was supposedly developed 50-plus years ago, early 70s. I know I'm a 69 baby. But anyway, it wouldn't work. And with the lithium-ion, by the way, it would take every bit of the lithium mined in the world today to do that. Not feasible. This is coal money that we're giving a woke company. I don't know how else you can put it. I think everybody said they've heard the audio of the CEO when he said their plan is to shut down all fossil fuel from burning. Coal, gas, the byproducts of wood, whatever technology out there. Their main goal is to shut fossil fuel down. Ladies and gentlemen, West Virginia was founded on coal. It's been there. Go back to Christmas. Look what happened at Christmas. If it wasn't for coal, we'd have had blackouts in West Virginia. Who would have ever thought you'd have seen blackouts in West Virginia? Again, this is a pig with lipstick. I just can't, I'm sorry. And by the way, they wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for the subsidies. All this free money coming out of D.C. This is all it is. When the subsidies dry up, guess what? They're gone. Bye. And God only knows what the environmental cost cleanup could be if they leave something. We don't know. Why don't we know? This ain't been the first battery made yet. That's going, I mean, I had a friend of mine, I won't say his name, but I asked him years ago, why is West Virginia coal so attacked? And he told me, he said, Rupee, West Virginia coal is king. He said, you take the king down, they all fall. That's their ultimate goal, is to kill coal. If West Virginia folds with the coal industry, Kentucky folds, Virginia folds, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Alabama, they all fold. You know, right now, let's go with this. I talked to one of my friends earlier. A lot of people, you know, again, we're going to go, there's two types of coal, as my friend from Marion knows, metallurgical and thermal. Well, you know what? I don't think a metallurgical coal mine can run on batteries. They consume a lot of electricity. So we're going to go to this stuff that I guess you're going to take, as I comment all the time, pixie dust and put on and try to make it work. We don't know if it's going to work. Again, we don't know the environmental cost. I mean, it's ridiculous. I was referred to that Nucor and Berkshire Hathaway come in. And they, you know, we rushed their bill through. Well, you know, also, Nucor come in here and spoke to people. Berkshire Hathaway come in here and spoke to people. But this is buried up in this pig with lipstick on it. And I just, it smells. I can't support it. I'm going to ask everyone else to vote against it. And if you want to run the bill on its own merits, you know, if Form Energy wants to come down and give us a presentation and explain what they are, what they plan on doing, show us something on paper. We haven't even got a pamphlet to look at. Nothing to look at. Just what economic development gave us and some words. Show us. If you're true, show us. Run a bill on its own. And I understand the gentleman from Brooke, how devastated Brooke County is. I get it. I really do. I'm from southern West Virginia, Logan County. You know, right now we're on a high with the coal industry. Again, I've got southern West Virginia alone, probably a good 1,000 jobs, direct coal mining jobs. You go up to Barber County, up in Tucker County, and up in Mon County, the mining. Everybody's hiring. I just can't support it, and I'm going to encourage everyone to vote no on it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll start off with, this is from the MOA agreement. It's a statement. It says, Form is a multi-day battery, will perform the global electricity system to reliably run on 100% low-cost renewable energy every day of the year. I mean, that sounds pretty generic. You know, they're wanting to run 100%. It says 100% renewables. That's fine. That's their company's statement. But the statement, or it's not a statement, it's an interview, and I'm going to read. Most of you have seen the video out there or heard the audio clip from the podcast interview from the CEO of Form Energy. I mean, the CEO is the top guy in the company. I don't have to explain that to you. And it says, the host asked, in your own words, what is Form Energy and what's your mission? Okay, and this is his answer. Form Energy is developing giant batteries to tackle climate change. We are building, in short, the kind of batteries you need to fully replace and retire coal and natural gas. So we are targeting all electric generation that is today currently produced through burning things. And what we want to do is enable wind, water, and solar to be the only only source of generation in the world. I respect their goals. That's the goal of the company. They own the company. They can have their own goals. All of us have goals. You that own companies, you have goals for your company. But we don't ask the state to throw not only their citizens under the bus, but their taxpayers. I mean, in reality, what we're doing here is taking money from we're an energy state. Whether you like it or not, or whether the country likes it or not, West Virginia is an energy state. We produce energy, gas, coal. You know, we just saved the PJM here over Christmas from collapsing because we ramped up our coal-fired plants that everybody else has shut down in the states. You know, Virginia brags about shutting down their coal plants, but guess where they get most of their power from? West Virginia. It's coal power plants. So everything about this and the whole scenario is hypocritical. You know, my job, I came down here as a legislator, and my job, I didn't come down here to broker deals with CEOs of big companies. You know, they send their lobbyists in normally to do that kind of work. I didn't come down here, and I've never been in on a contract, you know, trying to woo people here. I mean, I'm all for economic development. I think everybody here knows that as far as I know, I've never voted against an economic development bill because they've seemed reasonable. They've established companies, whatever. But I was sent down here to make laws, pass laws and policies to help West Virginia prosper and to protect the taxpayers and citizens of West Virginia. And you know, I'm pretty proud that I've been down here. This is my 11th session, my 11th year down here. And I can honestly say that I don't feel that I've ever been bought out, or I've never went against my principles or my morals or gave in to any pressure to do that. And I think most of you here knows me, that I've always been a straight shooter. You might not always like what I say, but I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. You know, I'm from the blue-collar class. I look at things a whole lot different than a lot of you from the white-collar class. I'm in the pits, literally in the pits, with these people every day that are your average American, your average West Virginia, that all they want to do is have a job, work for a living, go home, go hunting, fishing, drinking, whatever. They want to be left alone. They don't want the government in their life. You know, they pay their taxes. They don't try to get out of the paying their taxes. They're straightforward and hard-working class. I work with these people every day. I mean, other than when I'm down here, and I work with hard-working people down here. It's just a different setting. And I'm not against business in the Wheeling area or any area. You know, and I don't want my colleague to think that, you know, this is any kind of a personal tax. This is something that is near and dear to me. I mean, I feel strong about this, and it's just my opinion. The gentleman, I know he has his opinion, and you know, the representatives from that district, and when this, you know, this is probably going to pass, and you know, sun will come up tomorrow. We'll all still be friends, but I'm going to, you know, fight it till the very end. You know me, when I believe in something, I'll give it 100%, and if I lose, I'll come back tomorrow and fight again. But in the district that this is going into, we have some of the largest coal mines right now in West Virginia, and the biggest coal mines in the whole United States, area-wise, in this district. And we have three 3 longwall mines in that district, with one having 2 longwalls on it. I mean, they create thousands of jobs, and that's not exaggeration. We're not just including the miners. We're talking, you know, the machine shops, the hardwares, the convenience stores, you know, whatever the business be. So there's a lot of people that's going to be upset, because you got to realize we're 31. We got 31 in the majority here, which we never thought it would ever happen. I never did. I was in the minority on the other side. And we've sent down here to represent our constituents. Now, you might say, well, they don't see the big picture. Well, I can tell you that the average worker in West Virginia sees a picture a whole lot bigger than we do and a whole lot clearer than we do. And these are, you know, and they vote. Most of them vote. And we're sending a message to them, because I have several mines in my district. The gentleman from Upshur County is going to have, but when it's all said and done, they're opening up a new mines in his area. That's going to be the largest one in West Virginia. Two longwalls, you know, and he has the Arch Complex. Several of us have these coal mining jobs in our area, and it's just not coal mining jobs. Let's go in the gas industry in the northern Panhandle, the Doddridge County. Look what that area of the state, how they're prospering now. I mean, they don't even get the state aid or school aid formula money anymore, because they got so much money they don't know what to do with it. And you know what we do? We reward them. We reward them by taking their severance tax that they paid and giving it to a company that made this statement right here. Fully replace and retire coal and natural gas. That's not my words, that's their words. Okay, they say, well, they didn't mean it. Yeah, they did. We got 31 in this body for a reason. I'll go back to 2015. Well, let's go to 2000. I think it was 2010. The gentleman from Marion might remember House Bill 103 that they called the cap and trade bill. It was when Obama first got elected, and they passed the House. It was a cap and trade bill where you could trade carbon credits for pollution and all that. We fought that as a body, Republican body, fought that tooth and nail. We campaigned on it. I campaigned on it because of these same crazy people that was promoting that. We fought it tooth and nail. And you know what? The first bill that we did when we got control in 2015, the first House bill or Senate bill, I can't remember which one it came out of now. My memory's not that good anymore. It never was. But was to repeal that, because we ran on it. Most of us ran on that to repeal that. First bill out. Passed out, patted herself on the back. So here we are. That was in 2015. Here we are in 2023. Making House Bill 103 look like Mother Teresa. How times changed. How times changed. And I hate to say this, but I'm a little bit ashamed. I'm not ashamed of myself, but I'm ashamed that this is even an issue with us, with everything that is going on with this country. We sit here and complain about the present administration in D.C., our Congress, our Senate. And guess what? We're no better. We're just as bad for even considering this. Again, I'm going to tell you, I'm all for economic development. I voted for economic development. I told you that. But this is a company that's been in existence for 3 or 4 years, has never produced one battery, produced one battery, but they think they know how. They got 1970 technology thing. I'm a coal miner, not a technology guy. But they're using 1970 technology to to build these batteries. And you heard me ask the questions on all. This agreement has got so many loopholes in it that, I mean, you could strain spaghetti through it. But, you know, I have a problem with using not only taxpayers' money, the people that got us where we are today, using it and the severance tax from gas and coal, which is the biggest part of our budget. We brag about it all the time. We brag about it being the biggest part of our budget has been gas and coal severance tax. You know what I mean? But so we're just going to give it to the people that's trying to shut them down. I want to thank the people in the gas and coal industry. You know, this is their gift we're giving them. Happy Valentine's Day, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year's. But what does this say about our support for our miners and their support jobs, the gas industry, their support jobs? I mean, you know, all of us, after a week down here being beat down, we like to go home to friendly faces. I love to go home, see my grandchildren, see my family, you know, talk to my friends. I go home on the weekend. My coal mining guys, they beat me up like crazy because I said that I'm turning liberal on them and all that, jokingly, because they know I'm not. But we get refreshed, and we can count on them because you know why? They have our back. They have our back. So what are we saying to these hard-working West Virginians that are citizens of West Virginia, work here in West Virginia? How do I go home and explain this to them? I mean, I'm not going to have to because I'm going to tell them I fought like crazy to stop it. And, you know, I told you I would to the very end. I apologize for, you know, dragging session out, but this is something I feel strongly about. When I feel strongly about something, you know, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And that's the way I feel about this. I have no hard feelings. Every member in this body, I hope and pray that you feel you're doing the right thing and it wasn't because you was being pressured from the man downstairs or from corporate America, lobbyists. I don't know. This here bill has got me completely frazzled because usually when we have a bill this controversial, we have lobbyists up to our ears either trying to push it or trying to stop it. I haven't had one, well, I have had one person from downstairs come and talk to me about it, but it's just like, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. And a statement was made by my good friend from Morgan, who I respect tremendously, when he said this on the amendments is, we don't want to send this back to the House. We don't want to change it. We don't want to change it. We don't want to amend it because if we amend it, then it has to go back over to the House. So if something's wrong with it, let's not fix it or let's don't change anything because we might lose it. That's not the way you do legislation. You try to make legislation better where you can get everybody involved and get everybody happy about it. You know, I never seen this bill till, I mean, I knew it was coming out of the House. I didn't think it'd come out that quick, and then it ended up on second reading before I really realized it. Didn't go through our Finance Committee. You know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I don't see. But I never got to ask any questions. And you know, it happens. I realize that on a lot of bills. But something this controversial, because you see the vote, I mean, it's not going to be real close, but it's going to be a divided vote because people feel so passionate about this, about their moral values and what they campaigned on. Stop and think. I want my colleagues to stop and think what you campaigned on, what you told your constituents, what you told your constituents you were going to do when you got down here. Not what you was told to do, but what you was going to do when you got elected here, what you told your voters you were going to do when you got down here. remember the platform you ran on. And then if you can vote yes with a clear conscience, then more power to you. You're a better person than I am. With that, I'm going to close. I'm going to urge a no vote on this because very few bills keep me, I'm not going to say awake at night, but it did keep me awake just thinking exactly what we're saying to our voters and what we're doing with this and how we did it. When we're all said and done, we're all still going to be friends. I get that. But I want you to do some soul searching of what you told your voters, you know, that you was going to do, what platform you stood on when you was elected to serve in the body of the West Virginia Senate. It's a great honor and privilege to be here. I feel I'm the most blessed man in the world between my family and be able to do this. Because only in the United States of America can this happen. That you bring a coal miner from 7 miles underground and put him on the Senate floor to be able to give his opinion and speak to the people. And I thank God every day for the opportunity to do this. And I'm going to do my best to keep my word and do what is right for the people, all people of West Virginia, and be able to look myself in the mirror of a morning when I'm shaving and go to sleep at night with a clear conscience. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Junior Senator from the 7th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Gosh, conflicted. I had no intention of speaking to this bill, and I've struggled with this bill. Weirton deserves these jobs. They've paid a heavy price. I think somebody said there were 14,000 jobs at one point at that Weirton Steel site. And gosh, what it did to our communities and the social fabric of West Virginia during that downturn that not only affected Weirton, but all of West Virginia, hit our budgets. The challenge for us was our sons and daughters have moved away. But I'll say this body, the House of Delegates, our governor, our economic development folks, all of those folks engaged in the growth of West Virginia have done a tremendous job over the past 4 or 5 years, and we see the potential and the hope for growth like we've never seen before. We could be on the verge of a new dawn for West Virginia, where our sons and daughters choose West Virginia not because it's by default, but because it's where they choose to be. I struggle with this one because I want these jobs. I want these 750 plus jobs. I want the revenue created by these jobs. I just say to those who listen to my words today, who work in economic development, those folks who are lobbyists in terms of the charge of the growth of West Virginia, hear our words. I have no doubt the way this vote ends up being today. But I struggle with the very words of the company we bring in. Not my words, their words. You know, my dad is from the coal industry, spent 51 years in the coal industry. He'd go to work in the dark and come home in the dark. And it was from his work and the sweat on his brow and the sweat of the brow of those brothers in that effort to build West Virginia and to put the lights on, that the Christmas presents under our tree was provided. I say to all those folks in economic development as we move forward, I think I know how this vote ends up. But it is time that we become more choosy and more picky about the folks we do business with. I think it matters what their words are. This feels a little to me like someone moving in our house, eating our food, living in our bedroom, and complaining about the circumstances of their condition. Their words were clear. I throw out this challenge to the head of Form Energy and to Bill Gates and to Warren Buffett, put your money in investment in West Virginia. But what I say is invest in our coal miners. Let me see Bill Gates today stroke a check for investment in our coal miners and our coal fields. Why? This isn't going away. No matter what they try to do, no matter what the climate crazies say, no matter how much they denigrate the values that we hold dear, it ain't going away. And they need to invest in who we are as a people and respect our values. Respect our values. So I'll say this. I understand that some say if we vote against this, it sends a bad message to the rest of the world. I say there may not be a better message to send to the rest of the world. That when we're giving you our money, $300 million, thereabouts, of money from the sweat off the brow of West Virginia taxpayers, we expect those folks we're doing business with to respect the values of the people of West Virginia. I say this in terms of our coal jobs. They're important. That culture we have as West Virginians that ties us together in a way that many states don't have. I just say this to those folks who want coal to go away. We shall not go silently into the dead of night. We shall fight for these jobs. And if you want to come to West Virginia and do business with us, respect who we are as a people. Respect who we are as a people. After this passes, I'd like to see the CEO of Forum Energy commit $1 million to Southern West Virginia's coal field development. That's what I want to see. Will I get it? Watch the announcements over the next few days. I invite Bill Gates to join me and the senator from Logan and other folks who love this state and those coal miners that built this country, that coal that fired up those steel plants, that built the girders for the buildings that helped build this country into what it is today. I say to Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and all those ESG warriors around the world, come here and help us build this state. But don't disrespect who we are as a people. So I wasn't prepared to speak. I will vote no today because I believe at the end of the day, this is exactly the message we ought to send to the rest of the world. That we want your jobs, we want your business, but when you come here, you will respect who we are as a people. And I welcome these jobs. And I am committed to the building of Weirton and our northern panhandle. I love these companies coming here. But there is a consequence to your words. I learned that over the course of my career. There is a consequence to your words. And so when they are out there in the privacy of media, I put quotes around that, they need to understand that when they come to places like West Virginia and want to do business here and we're prepared to write big checks, they owe us the respect of a return investment and the things that we value so much. So, Mr. President, I'm going to vote no on this respectfully. I want these jobs. I struggled on this one, was not prepared to speak, reluctantly spoke. But my biggest point, is the challenge to these folks who have dissed our state and our people for so long to stroke some checks and help us develop these great jobs that we're waiting to develop. Free up those trains that are being held back, that take our coal to market. But to the folks here in West Virginia, on the front of economic development, as we move forward, let's be selective. Let's do the due diligence, and let's make sure the folks we're doing business with are consistent with the values of the people of West Virginia. Thank you very much.
So further discussion before I recognize the senator from Brooke to close debate. Senior Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Great debate.
Everyone's passionate. That's what we're here for. You know, when I ran 6 years ago, I asked myself, why are you doing this? And the only thing that could come to my mind was, I love this state and I want to see it grow. I'm passionate for this state. I ran because I wanted to create opportunities for each one of us. Each one of us represent a district to be able to create opportunity. And I really feel like that each one of you, that's what you had ran for too. Opportunities. How do we create those opportunities? We get our state in a position to be able to attract business. And we have done that. We have put policies in place to make us attractive. But what are we doing now? We've got companies that are looking at us. Each one of you in here, there is a ticker over into the Department of Economic Development. Each one of you in here that represent a district, you're getting hits. You've got companies that are looking to locate in your area. What happens? What happens if we reach down here and we hit this red button? What kind of message are we sending to the business community? Yes, he may have said something that I don't agree with. That's okay.